members have joined?
Yes, all of our members and speakers are on the call. We can begin to roll out.
Okay, that's magnificent. Can you just ask this person what they want? So a good evening to everybody and a warm welcome on a very warm day in Israel to the WWCA combined event with Telfed. Today is all about women's achievements and honoring women in Israel. So before we get a move along, I want to welcome our chairman, who's actually Bat-Chen. Also, please note, we prefer to call her our chairman and not chairwoman. And Bat-Chen will give us a short introduction to Telfed and a few words, greetings from Telfed. Bat-Chen.
Thank you, Teddy. As Teddy mentioned, I made history when I became the chairman of Telfed. I'm actually the first female chairman and hopefully not the last. And there was a whole debate whether I would be called the chair lady, the chairman, whatever. And somebody once said to me, chairman is not a gender. And so I'm very happy with that. And as I come to the end of my 4 years of being the chairman of Telfed, I can say I'm very proud to have been the first female chairman of Telfed. So for those people online who don't know what Telfed is the South African Zionist Federation, Israel. We mainly support Southern Africans and Australians living in Israel. But obviously, if anyone's got questions, you're welcome to ask our office staff for support. Telfed was actually established in 1948 when soldiers came to fight in the War of Independence and decided that they actually wanted to stay in Israel, and there was no framework for them. And so that's when Telfed was established. So Telfed actually is Tel Aviv Federation because that's where our offices were when we first started. And we've actually come a really far way since then. We've come a really long way. We've supported, like I say, we've helped in many different aspects of Aliyah, including the Iranian Aliyah, the Russian Aliyah. We've been involved with the Dutch Aliyah. So all along the way, we've had experience with quite a few different facets of Aliyah. Our main thing is obviously Klita, helping Olim settle in Israel. We have amazing scholarship programs. We have a social worker who helps with assistance. We give out 400 food cards a month for needy people in Israel, needy South Africans, because we are the South African Zionist Federation. We have apartments that we rent out, and with the rental from those apartments, we use the money to help within the community. So it's quite an amazing thing. In terms of our scholarship program, we have something called PRAS, which is like Perach at the universities, where our students get a scholarship in return for volunteering within the community. They help with New Olim or with people with special needs or with the elderly, and in return we give them a scholarship, which is really something that helps the Olim. And we see that it's been very, very successful, and that is definitely one of our flagship programs. We also see the need to help lone soldiers as much as possible. It's difficult enough being a soldier, never mind a lone soldier. I have 2 soldiers of my own, and I see the challenges.
Oh, thank you. What did you do?
The challenges that they face. And so we try and be their family while they're away from home, and hopefully they'll decide to make Israel their home, which is our aim. So we have volunteers right throughout Israel, from the north all the way down to the south, for people to get involved in fun activities to help New Olim to connect. We're trying to establish a buddy system so that if people are thinking of making Aliyah, to try and pair you with people in the areas that you'd be looking at. And I think that would also help with a successful Aliyah. And one other part of making a successful Aliyah is having gainful employment. And so we have an employment department within Telfed to try and help people find jobs. Besides that, we have a magazine and a website and an Instagram thing, and I just urge you all to take a look at what we do, and if we can be of any help to any of you, that would be wonderful. And looking forward to hearing all these talented women. Very proud to be part of you, and thank you to Aviva and to Teddy and to Cheryl for joining us with the WWCA, and obviously to all the other panel speakers, especially Michal. Looking forward to hearing you for a bit. I apologize if I have to leave a little early because I have another meeting, but have a good evening, and I wish everybody a successful Aliyah, and let's work together to do amazing things.
Bat-Chen, thank you for those words. I'm going to call on Aviva to give an introduction to Cheryl and WWCA. So Aviva, if you can join us again and give us a couple of words.
Thank you. I believe Cheryl will be introducing WWCA and telling us more about it.
Ah, okay, that's good. Thank you. So then, Cheryl, you're up next.
Okay, thanks so much. Thank you, Telfed. Thank you, Bat-Chen. Thank you, Aviva. Thank you, Teddy, for this initiative. I believe that these types of events really bring great value to the community and to Olim and to potential Olim. It stimulates ideas, innovation, and collaborations that have no bounds. I'd also like to thank our keynote speaker, Michal Cotler, and our World Women Conference and Awards panel, Dr. Lilach Saperstein, Rebbetzin, Bat-Chen, Grossman, Nicole Oren and Justine Friedman, who you will all get to meet after Michal has spoken. And all of us were newbie Olim at one stage. So we have lived through the process and of settling into a new way of life. And I'd also like to thank our speakers who have given up their free time to share with us in their experiences and in their knowledge, and also to you, our audience, who has shown up. Showing up is such an important part of creating a foundation from where to build. Now, we've all come from diverse backgrounds and from diverse backgrounds and origins, yet we were all drawn here to Eretz Israel for many different reasons and one common theme, that is to be able to create happy and fulfilling lives for ourselves and for our families. At the end of the day, it's how you change and adapt to your circumstances that is a key indicator of how to integrate into a new lifestyle. So let us get real about the stressors and the challenges that we as women have to face. It's not always easy. Our kids have challenges in settling in. Family, financial worries, stress on the marriage and relationships. We know the list can get quite long. Now, one of the objectives for tonight's events is to let you know that you are not alone. There is a support system, and you should not shy away from reaching out. Successful Aliyah is not only a matter of chance, but choice. So I'm Cheryl Putterman. I'm originally from Johannesburg, South Africa. I arrived in Israel in 1993, which makes it 28 years already. I arrived here with no employment, with only a suitcase in hand. And now jumping forward, I'm a wife, I'm a mom of 2 beautiful sons, and I'm the founder and CEO of Nourishment Vitality, a 360 health and wellness platform specializing in stress and anxiety management and holistic weight management. I'm also the chapter leader and for the World Women Conference and Awards, and the international grassroots chair of the World Women Conference and Awards that was founded by the amazing Ragne Sinikas from Estonia and now Mexico. What the WWCA Israel chapter is all about is that we provide the Israeli woman ecosystem an opportunity, to empower, to network, and to create change for a positive force for good in the various verticals of health, of education, of personal development, and of wealth creation. The WWCA is proactive in the cultural development within and between nations without any bias or conditions, and we provide the opportunity to interact with an international audience through the organization. The World Women Conference and Awards, WWCA, is a global community of chapters from North and South Americas, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and we are growing with the mission and the vision of empowering women with innovative ideas and initiatives. Our WWCA events, our talks, and our summits are held throughout the year, both online and hopefully now more in person as well. So please do reach out to the WWCA. It's an amazing foundation and sisterhood, and join us in making a difference through engagement and empowering through confidence that your voice is your superpower. So it is a great honor to introduce you to Michal Cotler-Wunsh, who has the voice and the superpower of understanding, compassion, empathy, and most importantly, getting things done. Michal was a member of parliament in our last Knesset and is a tireless worker for human rights, women's rights, children's rights, immigration, and integration, amongst a very long list of additional accomplishments. I've had the honor of hearing Michal speak on numerous panels, and I would like to thank her again for making the time for us this evening. So Michal, it's over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And just to really begin with thanks for the opportunity to engage in this way, for everybody that has, as you said, shown up to join us this evening, and to Telfed and to WWCA for the opportunity really to engage on such important issues to us all. And even, beginning with the title, with keeping it real, which is always my preferred sort of choice when I engage these topics, because I believe that that's actually part of preparing or coping with challenges, is actually keeping it real and not sugarcoating and not creating perhaps expectations that then lead to disappointment. So maybe I'll begin with a bit of a short sort of, for those that don't know me, my own story. And then from there, of course, I would love to interact. And if there's any questions, engage with you in the time that we have this evening. As mentioned, my name indeed is Michal Cotler-Wunsh. I believe there's another Canadian here with us tonight. I grew up in Montreal, but married to a South African. So I get the best of all. Parents emigrated from Johannesburg as well. That's the Wunsh piece that the South Africans may recognize. The Cotler is the Canadian piece. And I am a product of a little bit of what you referred to before, and that is the multiplicity of identities and voices that I believe actually it's high time that we recognize the value of. So that should be a source of empowerment, not a source of disempowerment, a source of strength and not a source of weakness, whether it be of course, the linguistic abilities, but far, far beyond that, the ability to be the bridge and the translator, not only to Israel diaspora relations, not only to the challenges that Israel faces in the international arena, but also actually as a path forward for what challenges and ails the state of Israel internally in terms of the societal challenges and internal resiliency that we face. So I'll give a little bit about myself. As I said, I was born in Jerusalem and actually moved to Canada at a very young age and grew up in Montreal. I then emigrated to Israel on my own as a lone soldier. So Bat-Chen mentioned the support that Telfed gives lone soldiers, and that is something that I had not only the tremendous privilege to advance in Knesset, but is deep, deep in my heart. I think that lone soldiers and the support of lone soldiers, and actually the very seriously, that not only are there for the time of service, of military service, but really hopefully be able to take into civilian life of lone soldiers. And as I said, having served as one, very, very fully cognizant of the tremendous ways that we've made in terms of support for lone soldiers that exist today, that did not exist in the past. And there's always room for, of course, for improvement, but with great gratitude to the organizations like Telfed that support already and enable that sort of transition, not just for the lone soldiers, very possibly also for their families, for their parents who are abroad. I attended law school actually in Jerusalem. So my LLB is from Hebrew University. Actually emigrated back to Canada, where my parents, the rest of my family was, and my own children were actually born in Canada, and then 10 years ago moved back to Israel with 4 very Canadian children to Ra'anana, very, very fortunate that, you know, that the ability to be able to move back and forth in that way. And Ra'anana is a city, and I know we have some other, you know, people from Ra'anana on the Zoom tonight, but in general, the understanding that there are communities and the importance of community, and what we're doing here this evening is really a celebration of that, a marking of that, an understanding of the importance of community, of the support structures that community offers, immigrants in general, and I would say women specifically, with the challenges that come with emigrating and with bringing an entire family, with all of the challenges that were mentioned before, possibly, you know, to the challenges of children, of course, the challenges in terms of professional development that women experience, and oftentimes sort of leaving that to the last priority, where we place our energies, because we first want to make sure that everybody else is settled and everybody else is managed. And that has its ramifications too, that we can discuss possibly in this sort of later in this Zoom, but in general to be aware of. And the keeping it real part, and, you know, fast forward, I've given a little bit of my own bio back and forth, Canada, Israel. And that is because I believe that is what has informed a lot of what I've done throughout, whether it be academically and professionally, with regards to Israel standing in the international arena, the utilization of international law, the affirmation of international law, and the adoption of what I call the language of rights, the lingua franca spoken by both Israel's friends and foes, in challenging the state of Israel's, actually, its very right to exist as what it is, as what it was founded to be, upon the principles of the Declaration of Independence, i.e. a Jewish and democratic state. So those are challenges that we face and are very real today. I believe that having the multiplicity of identities that many of us on this Zoom tonight, and the understanding of what I like to think of as Israel from the outside in, rather than Israel from the inside out, offers tremendous insights and an ability to address the challenges that the state of Israel faces. In addition, that back and forth, and each of us have our own personal stories that inform a very important piece, and that is Israel-diaspora relations. One that seems to be something that we really have to be paying greater attention to, the growing gaps, the potential risks between Israel and diaspora, the importance of understanding the notion of peoplehood, as Israel becomes a solid sovereign country, you know, having just turned 73, and being not only the nation state of the Jewish people, but I would say the center for Judaism, with everything that comes with that, tremendous responsibility. And as I sort of inferred before, the understanding of not only what challenges immigrants, new immigrants, Olim, whether they're veteran Olim or new Olim to the state of Israel, but the understanding that very often we bring with us, having gone, you know, sort of through the journey of back and forth, and sometimes very possibly having our voices be silenced because we come from the outside in, the imperative to reach out to other communities within Israeli society, and the ability to heal those rifts, the ability to be that bridge, the ability to very often see where we would like to take the state of Israel at 73, the Jewish and democratic incredible miracle that is the state of Israel, in terms of its development forward as a sustainable, democratic and Jewish country. And you know, I stall on those, and very often as a member of Knesset, I used the reference to the Declaration of Independence. Actually, one of the first bills that I proposed is the Basic Law Declaration of Independence, because there is something about the imperative to renew the covenant around which the state of Israel was constructed and was never anchored into law. So we talk about the Declaration of Independence and we refer to the Declaration of Independence, and actually the Declaration of Independence has a lot of answers to what ails us, both internally and from the outside, both, as I said, in terms of Israel's internal resiliency in the society, and in terms of Israel's diaspora relations and the challenges to Israel's very legitimacy to exist as Jewish and democratic. And so that perspective, I believe, of Olim is very, very important. And it's very important to me to be here this evening in order to empower Olim, as I said, veteran or new, prospective Olim, and anybody who's joined us from abroad. I believe I heard there's somebody here from Johannesburg with us. And I think that is a really important understanding, that it is very timely. Often people ask me, you know, the founding generation didn't do whatever it is that they didn't do. And my response is, we are the founding generation. And if the founding mothers and fathers of this country 73 years ago began to lay down the physical infrastructure for this incredible place that we are so privileged to be living in, and God forbid should we take for granted, it is our generation's role to lay down what I would call the spiritual infrastructure. And we have that ability and we have that responsibility to lead in that very important process. When I say we, I mean Olim. I think that the voices of Olim are very instructive to this process. I think that we have an incredible opportunity to, and I would say again, responsibility to lean in and sit around the policy making and decision making tables. And perhaps that propels me into this last very challenging Knesset that I had the great honor to serve the public, the entire Israeli public and the Jewish people in, and certainly specifically my constituents, Olim from all over the world, my constituents, English-speaking Olim, French-speaking Olim, my constituents who actually believed in the imperative to have the kind of representation that I was privileged and honored to represent. And that is in a very sort of my understanding of representational democracy. So it was our office that, you know, received thousands of emails and phone calls from Olim that for the first time felt that they had an address, or for the first time in many years felt that they had an address. There have been Anglo-Olim in Knesset before. Interestingly, none have been around for long enough in the several, you know, last Knessets, but we are in a process, as you all know, a fourth election in under 2 years. I excused myself from running in this last election for multiple reasons, but I do very much intend on continuing to represent and advance the voices and the issues that it has been a tremendous privilege to represent in this outgoing Knesset, or in the outgoing Knesset. And the importance that I think that that became very, very clear, whether it be in the Law and Constitution Committee or the External Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, or women's status or children's rights, or as chair of the coping with drug and alcohol use, or as the chair of the subcommittee on Israel-diaspora relations, in the multiple committees that I was very honored to sit in. And it's very important people understand that the Knesset work as legislator and also as supervising the executive branch is very important. It's a tremendous committees in each of those areas of interest to all of us, to the entire Israeli of what I call looking at Israel from the outside in became very, very clear very quickly. So it's not only you know, my academic experience with international law or my professional experience with international law, but really that multiplicity of identities that we refer to in this conversation that I believe offered tremendous insights into each of those topics. And with those insights comes a tremendous responsibility to take our place around the table, to challenge paradigms, to take responsibility for constructing what I referred to before, and that is, you know, for the creation of the possibility of having the conversation around what it means to be a Jewish and democratic state at 73, a sovereign state that has, for the first time in millennia, has seen an indigenous people return to its ancestral homeland with all of the challenges that comes with. And the conversation that we're having here tonight. So the understanding that when we make Aliyah, what we bring with us are tremendous tools, is tremendous knowledge, is very, very important experience that has the ability to actually affect change. And with that ability to affect change comes the responsibility of each of us to actually make a difference. And I would be remiss if I didn't share with you that ultimately, if I had to pinpoint the one case and cause that brought me personally into Knesset, it is my commitment to the return of deceased soldiers, Hadar Golden and Aron Shaul, and civilians, Avera Mengistu and Hisham Asayed, really from my international law background, having created the legal case and cause for the imperative to return not only Hadar Golden and Aron Shaul, as I said, two deceased soldiers, but two civilians, Avera Mengistu and Nishama Syed, who've all been held in standing violation of international law principles for nearly 7 years. And so when we speak to each other, when we speak amongst Olim, and when we have the possibility of affecting change amongst our own circles, whether it's at work or our family or our community or with communities abroad, when I say that we have an amazing ability to serve as a bridge, to serve as translators, not just of the English language, but of Israel's challenges to the outside world, then that is the case and cause that ultimately propelled me to Knesset, understanding that at the end of the day, in order to affect change, we have to be around the decision-making tables. We have to take our rightful place there, and opportunities for each Olah and Oleh to the State of Israel, who ultimately, each of you have fulfilled the mission, the vision, and the values of the 73-year-old miracle that is the State of Israel, leaving everything behind, whether it be family or community or a profession or whatever it is that we have each and all left behind in order to fulfill and realize that mission, that vision, those values. And with that, I know it comes at a price, but with that comes a tremendous ability to actually propel the State of Israel forward, to actually take our rightful place in leading the State of Israel in the next 73 years. And there are many ways of doing that. And it doesn't matter what it is that, you know, after the initial challenges that we face, we recognize that we can do. Every person here has the ability to make change. Every person here on this Zoom, you know, every person that you know has the ability to pinpoint their own strengths and utilize them in order to propel Israel forward. And I would argue that that is the miracle that we get to live in. You know, we're living at a historic time. In COVID-19, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, of course, the extra challenges that COVID-19 presented for Olim, which had me at times very frustrated in Knesset, because decision makers don't necessarily understand that when we reopen you know, the general sort of, it doesn't matter what it is, vacation ability or school system to everybody else. But we haven't even understood that there are people who cannot see their parents because they are not Israeli citizens, or their children because they are not Israeli citizens, or have their parents attend their weddings, their chuppah, or have lone soldiers that two children live in Israel and their parents are vaccinated but cannot get to the State of Israel in order to have Seder with their two lone soldiers. Those are challenges that we have the responsibility to raise. Those are voices that we have to sound as those that have experienced those challenges. There's no way that a Sabra who has a parent, you know, doesn't matter if it's in Petah Tikva or Haifa, could actually conceptualize that challenge. And so that has been a frustrating part of COVID-19. But at the same time as COVID-19 and the challenges that came with it economically and health-wise and mental health-wise, and of course, socially speaking, in various groups and individuals in the State of Israel, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that at the very same time this last year, we did see the incredible transition that the Abraham Accords brought with them. This very last year that we've experienced this tremendous challenge has brought with it ultimately the possible end of the Arab-Israeli conflict as we know it. The transition from rejectionism to normalization that has happened during this very year, based on what I call the pivot from the 3 no's of the 1967 Khartoum conference to the 3 yeses, yes to recognition and yes to negotiation, yes to peace with Israel, in that order. And so we are, my friends, living really at a historic time with tremendous opportunities and tremendous responsibility to identify and realize those opportunities. And I encourage every person here to feel that sense of empowerment, to feel that sense of ability and capability, to reach out, as you said, you know, so appropriately, not to feel alone, and to know that you have what to contribute to this incredible place at this incredible time, in this incredible, challenging sort of storm that we seem to be in, including at these sort of very, very challenging politically and, in every other way times that we're living in. I think I'll end here because I'd love to hear if there are any questions. If there's any more, specific questions that you have that you'd like me to address, then I'd love to address them. If I could hear from you, or that would be great.
Thank you, Michal. I don't know where Cheryl is, but if anybody has a question, they are welcome to either write it in the chat or ask Michal right now, here and now. It's your chance. Questions, please. You're welcome to unmute yourselves and ask a question.
Hi, I have a question. Thank you so much.
Certainly, Dr. Lilach.
It's
Welcome.
really nice to meet you. I've seen you speak and all sorts of things. I'm really glad to meet you now. So my question is, for those people who are certainly not interested in political life as that path, what would you say are things that you could do in your own community, in your own family, in your own school that can still make that impact without being like the Olim in the corner?
So thank you so much for raising that. It is by no means is politics the only way that I mean to contribute. In every single of those examples that you've just listed, in your school and in your community and in your home and in your profession, there is an incredible amount of contribution that Olim can and do make. When you think of the impact Olim has had on this country, by the way, it's a country of Olim. Essentially, when we talk about Olim as if, because we've experienced it firsthand, but the state of Israel is a country of Olim. And it's true that I do argue that as a country of Olim, it is high time that we understand and recognize the challenges of Olim. But the contribution that Olim have made in every aspect of the state of Israel's development is tremendous, in the medical profession, in education, in voluntary or the third sector, in philanthropy, in every single sector that you touch, in everywhere that you look. And there's something special about that, because I believe that when you move here from somewhere else, when you do realize that vision, mission, and values that theoretically we know the state of Israel was founded to be, but when you actually realize that vision, mission, and values, there's not a day that goes by that you take this country for granted. There's not a day that goes by that you say, well, I could live with it or live without it. I could live here or live elsewhere. And that is a really important role to play in every one of those examples, right? We all have, and that's why I say like circles of influence. It could be at work and it could be at school and it could be at home and it could be amongst friends and it could be in communities and it could be in synagogues and it could be in every aspect of our lives, where we have a very important role in reminding people that there is not a moment that we should be taking this country for granted, that the understanding of, by the way, Zionism, that the understanding of the very, very basic understanding of, as I said before, an indigenous people returning to its ancestral homeland after millennia, based upon the founding principles of the Declaration of Independence, not only of the state of Israel being the nation state of Jewish people, but also ensuring equality to all of its minorities, to all of its citizens. Everything I've just said, and I'm not even talking about good governance and long-term planning and the imperative to then create a sovereign country for the first time after millennia where we didn't have sovereignty, and understanding that some of us come with, perhaps because we come from more seasoned democracies, of what a sovereign country must function like in order to create long-term holistic plans which are there, were then equally and consistently applied to all. There's not 1 second that anybody here should think that it's only in politics where we can make a difference. Not at all. In every aspect of life, I would argue, just about the political piece, that it is important that we understand that everywhere else we've made an impact, but it's imperative we make an impact in the public political life of the state of Israel as well. That it's imperative that our voices be sounded around the policy and decision-making tables of the political spectrum as well, not only for the sake of Olim, not only for the sake of Israel-diaspora relations, not only for the sake of Israel's standing in the international arena, but actually for the entire Israeli public, for the multiplicity of reasons that I just mentioned, because of the impact that we have and can have in every aspect of life. So thank you for that, Lila.
Thank you, guys. Does anybody have a question for Michal?
If not, if there's no further questions now, I'm going to jump in, I think, Teddy, and introduce the WWCA
Fantastic,
panel
fantastic.
speakers. Firstly, Michal, thank you for your wise words and for saying, because it is so true, that in every aspect of life, we all have that capability and ability to create change, to make a difference in the lives of so many people out there. So in celebration of the support systems for our women, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our WWCA speakers. And as you mentioned, knowledge is power. So Justine Friedman is an Ola from South Africa. She's a clinical dietitian and mindset mentor, and she is passionate about helping her clients achieve long-term health through realistic life changes. Justine, it's over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be on this panel tonight, and following in Michal's footsteps is not an easy feat at all. I want to thank you, Michal, because if ever there was a day that I was feeling lack of inspiration, today you have boosted the inspiration. It was absolutely magical to listen to you speak. As Cheryl mentioned, I come from Johannesburg, South Africa, and my husband and our 2 teenage kids made Aliyah just under a year and a half ago. So we're fresh off the boat, and there have been many challenges that we've had to deal with, obviously, in this time of COVID. One of them, which I found in particular, and I'm not going to speak too long about it, was converting my degree. From practicing in South Africa as a dietitian, and I had my own private practice for over 17 years, coming to Israel and nobody knowing who I was. And I'm still in the process of building that up. So for future Olim, one of the messages I want to give you is that ask questions before you come, find out the information. I spoke to dietitians in Israel to get guidance from them as to how to go about the system. At least I was prepared. I had the documents that I knew that I needed to have translated and an attorney who could help me. And the really grueling part of it was actually sitting down and studying for an exam that I had already passed 20 years before. So when they say knowledge is power, oh my goodness, you have to relearn some things, but I really feel that it also gave me a great inspiration to also reignite in me the ability to give more to my clients. Thank God I was also helped by Telfed in that endeavor, because my daughter had a press student and they didn't gel, but she actually helped me with a lot of translations with Hebrew, which was really very empowering. So in the experience, I just want to give you some practical insights into what I, as a dietitian, found incredibly challenging, which I never expected to happen. I prepared in making Aliyah with all my documents and in knowing where I wanted to live. So my family chose to live in Modi'in. I looked at schools for my children. We decided on which kuppah, which medical aid to belong to. We looked at which bank to choose as far as who would give us the best rates. And the one thing I never ever thought would slip up for me or would be a challenge for me was going to the shops and buying food. I mean, all my life, I have taught people how to go to the shops, read food labels, and buy food. The first time I took my kids shopping, which was the day that we landed, we walked into a supermarket. A friend of ours, thank God for community, drove us there. My kids walked around, my teenage kids, like kids in a candy shop. They were in their absolute element. I let them buy Bisley, which they never bought before. I let them buy 2-minute noodle soup. Thank God for 2-minute noodle soup. We ate that for supper for probably a week. And chocolate spread, because who can live without chocolate spread in Israel? And they were excited, and I was completely floored, because there I was in a supermarket. I couldn't read any of the food labels, barely. The only thing I could recognize was fresh fruits and vegetables. I could recognize what milk and eggs were. and I was so overwhelmed. So one thing that I did was I took on my phone, I got Google Lens, and I walked around the shop with Google Lens, looking at different products. And please believe me that the translation is not always great, but I used it anyway. And slowly I educated myself. So one of the things that I found very important was the ability to go to a shop and to use it as an experience, to not feel that there were so many blocks and obstacles to me being able to make sense of what was happening, and rather to use this as a tool to empower myself. So slowly over the months, through my studying for the exam, I also got to learn a lot of nutrition terms and food terms, which was very beneficial. But I was then able to apply that then to my shopping experiences. So one thing that I really find important, and how I try and help current Olim, future Olim, is to be able to also have a much easier shopping experience, to understand what the labels mean, to give them an idea of what the Hebrew means on a label and how to read it and how to get the best ideas of what to buy. What I found also quite challenging was being so used to products from South Africa and not knowing what to substitute them with here. So there's a bit of a premium that you pay for chutney and for Nando's sauces, which I'm still very happy to pay because there's certain recipes that just can't do without them. But over time, I've learned to integrate and make sure that whatever I'm buying, I can substitute in recipes. And that's something that I help my clients do as well. So I've put a worksheet together for the Olim that have even been here for a while and for future Olim, so that that first shopping experience is a much easier one. For my American clients, I try to give them an idea of how to convert from the imperial to the metric system, because that can also be incredibly challenging, not to know how much to buy of certain products. So this is something that I am incredibly passionate about, not only encouraging my clients to eat in a healthy way and to think in a healthy way, but also how to navigate those shopping experiences, because we certainly can't do without food. So that is, for me, something that I really try and build on. I don't want to run over time. I've got a little handout prepared that I'll drop into the chat, which is something that I give to some of my clients just to help you along the way. And you're more than welcome to contact me. I put my Facebook group on there as well, which I give a lot of support on. Be in touch. I'd only be too happy to help with your integration. Thank you so much for the honor of being able to speak on this panel. Thank you, Cheryl, as well.
Thank you so much, Justine. Absolutely, at the end of the day, very important to know where you're going, and therefore knowledge is definitely power. Learning to advocate for your child using the FIG method. Dr. Lelach Saperstein is an audiologist and a host of the All About Audiology podcast. She helps parents of deaf and hard of hearing children achieve confidence, connection, and advocacy skills without making decisions for them by providing knowledge, tools, and understanding of their role as parents. Such an important topic. Dr. Lelach Saperstein, over to you.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be speaking with everyone here today and learning from all of you. I'm from Brooklyn, and I made Aliyah 3 years ago. I live in Kiryat Shmuel outside of Haifa, and I'm an audiologist. So I too had this whole moving of degrees saga that was long and extended, taking exams and all of that. But what I also came across that I wasn't expecting was the difference in how the healthcare system is really set up very differently, and how people have access to different things in very different ways. So while I was learning what are the options that parents have and what are they actually fighting for, what are they eligible for, what are all their rights, kind of learning with them, with my patients and clients, I also always brought it back to, we have those technical things. Like, you need to learn who are the government agencies and who do you need to talk to and what paperwork do you need. But at the same time, you have this other parallel thing that's always going on, which is your emotional journey, and how having a child who has any kind of special needs, but specifically with hearing loss, how that affects your relationship with them, their ability to communicate, their ability to access education, social inclusion, all of the things that come with that. So I focus actually more on this side of things, on integrating that relationship part, the heart part of the parents. There are a lot of things focused on the child, and then we have to help parents access that. But I really help the parents find their role, like you mentioned. And the biggest thing that I share is a method that I came up with that's very simple to remember that can really help parents when they're advocating. And that is the FIG method, F-I-G, which stands for familiarity, intent, and goal. So in every interaction, whether it is with the supervisor of a new school, their teacher, the doctor or specialist, or your neighbor, or someone in the playground, we have all these interactions all the time where you do need to speak up, where you need to fight for the rights and needs of your child. But also there's this big emotional thing that happens when you're in those interactions. So we have to kind of take a step back for a second and look at the familiarity with this person, because who they are to you and to your child really matters. A family member you speak to very differently than you would speak to a child on the playground that just said something they didn't maybe mean or know about, versus someone you're coming to get support and resources from, right? So who is this person? What is your familiarity to them? The I in the FIG method is what is their intent? Because many times people will tell you something and you'll feel, hey, they were really out to get me, or that was super rude or very ignorant. And many times people really just don't know. They're in a position where they spoke too soon, they're not educated. So we look at the person's intent. Did they really mean to hurt you? Did they really mean to be awful? And sometimes the answer is yes, we are going to keep that real. But also then to know, okay, so now you're aware of the intent, to think about the familiarity, the intent, and finally your goal. What is it that you want out of the interaction that's happening? If it's to fight for those services that you want to get, then you have that clear goal in mind and you're coming into those meetings with a different kind of energy. Versus, sometimes your goal is to not be at that particular school party anymore because it's just too loud and inaccessible for your child. And you might say, okay, we're going to leave early. So knowing what your goal is and what you want to accomplish and achieve for your child really frames in a nice bow how you can then move forward and advocate for them. So I have a free download for you as well. I'll pop that in a chat from more about the podcast and the work that I do with families all around the world at allaboutaudiology.com. Thank you so much, and it's really a pleasure to meet all of you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lilach. As a stress practitioner, I just want to say again on keeping it real. My favorite definition of stress is striving to repair every situation solo. You don't need to go it alone. There are so many people that one can actually reach out to, ask the questions and get that support. Our next speaker is going to be speaking about Confused to Confident, Nicole Oren, life coach for women, who primarily works with new moms who want to work on their own terms, helping them effectively balance both babies and business. Nicole.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Nicole, like Cheryl said, and I want to say I'm so humbled and honored to be here with you, incredible women. I'm so inspired by the stories I just heard and the ones we're going to hear as well. And I want to say that one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be here is I made Aliyah 10 years ago, and it took me about 7 years to acclimate here. In those 7 years, I was an officer in the IDF. I did 2 degrees here. I really tried to build a life here, but I always felt like an outsider. And only when I started doing the internal work and really looking within myself was I able to really create a wonderful, fulfilling, meaningful life here. So that is why I want to talk to you about Confused to confident, because I believe that to really create a meaningful Aliyah experience, you must look within and understand who you are and make your decisions from a place of power. So when making Aliyah or debating if to make Aliyah, it's very normal to be faced with a ton of decisions. Where should we live? Where should I send my kids to school? Should I continue in the same career path that I had before? How do I even do that? Like Justine mentioned, and should we even make Aliyah? So many decisions. Now, it's very easy for the brain to feel overwhelmed by the influx of decisions. And when the brain feels overwhelmed by the influx of decisions, what it tends to get us to do is it tends to get us to stay in a state of confusion. Because when we are confused and when we don't know what to do, we literally stay exactly where we are and we don't move forward. Confusion is actually a tactic by the brain that gets us to stay exactly where we are, which is one of the brain's primary motives, to keep you where you are, to keep you safe and comfortable. But what it doesn't do is it's not very useful in actually getting you towards your goals or towards making a decision. So one of the ways to really foster confidence and really overcome confusion is to make decisions from a place of power. So there are actually 3 steps to do this, and I have a worksheet that it will ask you a bunch of questions anytime you're faced with a decision, but I will touch on the 3 steps. The first step is when you're about to decide something, whether big or small, ask yourself, what is the best case scenario? So say you're contemplating if to make Aliyah or not to make Aliyah. So what is the best case scenario? The best case scenario could be something like, my kids are having a blast. I love it here. I'm so fulfilled by my career and my community. Great experience. Step 2 is asking yourself, what is the worst case scenario? So for the same example, the worst case scenario would be something like, my kids hate it. I'm not acclimating here. We're suffering. And after a year, we move back to South Africa or wherever. That would be the worst case scenario. Now, step 3 is really owning both of these outcomes. So making a decision from a place of, even if the worst case scenario were to happen, I am still deciding to do this because I own that outcome just as much as I own and take ownership of the best case scenario. Because people tend to think that there's a right or wrong decision to be made and it's some objective standard. But in reality, what makes a decision the right decision is that you literally decide it's the right decision. You label it as the right one. So for you to make the right decision, it really stems from owning both the worst and best case scenario and making your decision being, the Hebrew word is shlema, like being whole in either outcome and okay with either outcome. So that is how to make decisions from power and really overcoming confusion to confidence. I'm going to post in the chat a worksheet. Anytime you're faced with a decision, go ahead and fill it out. It's really helpful. And thank you so much for allowing me to speak here.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. And now we're on to marriage baggage. Sometimes we bring some of that as well. Rebbetzin Bat-Chen Grossman is a marriage coach for women in business. She is passionate about aligning your marriage to your success and purpose. Rebbetzin.
Hi. So I'm Rebbetzin Bat-Chen Grossman, connectedforreal.com. I made Aliyah in 2007. What else? I'm under the weather today, so I'm going to do my best. So I want to talk about marriage baggage because this is my specialty. I am a marriage coach, and I see that a lot of times what happens is that we hope that when we move to a new country, everything will just sort of be better, disappear. You know, all of our problems will sort of magically sprinkle all around and everything will change. And it is a very nice belief that, you know, if you change your location, you change your situation, and it does help. but you have to be prepared. You have to be intentional about that. When you're going into that change, you have to be intentional about the things that you are, one second, my kids just came in. You have to, where was I? You have to be intentional. Could you close the door? Thank you. You have to be intentional about what you're going to do in order to prepare yourself for success. So one of the things that I do with women, because I only work with women, I believe that the men are off the hook. If we can do it, because it's a lot of internal work, if we can set ourselves up for success, then we will be successful. And when I work with women that are making this big change, they actually take ownership, like Nicole said, over their situation. They make choices to be intentional about what is important to them to bring with them and what is important to them to leave behind. So like we were saying before, you don't have to take all of that baggage of what your in-law said and what he said and how, 17 years ago something happened. All of those things are really not serving you. And so there's a real blessing in letting go of those things and really allowing yourself to come fresh. But you cannot do that by magic. You have to do it intentionally. So as a present to you, I have two things in the chat. There is connectedforreal.com/free, which is a free PDF of the 5 surprising ways to improve your marriage. And it's actually really fun. And also I have a marriage breakthrough retreat that is starting in a week and is completely free, and you're all welcome to come. connectedforreal.com/retreat. And if anybody has any questions, I am, like everyone else on the panel, super happy to answer, and we're really here for you. This is what we're here for. So thank you so much, Cheryl and everybody, and Telfed.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our WWCA panel speakers. And again, thank you so much to Michal for your invaluable insights and for making time for our forum. Teddy, I'm going to pass over to you.
Thank you so much to all the ladies. You've done an amazing, inspiring job this evening. And of course, it's wonderful to hear all your positive ways, and I think that it's very, very helpful to people who are considering Aliyah or people who are in a situation that do need some kind of inspiration. So thank you for all that inspiration, ladies. There are some questions that people would like to pose the channel. They're welcome to do so now. Please unmute yourself and ask the questions. Anybody like to ask a question? Whether it's the marriage baggage, whether it's the nutrition lady, whether it's Nicole. Come on, guys. Fonda, what about a question all the way from Eilat? You have to unmute yourself, Fonda. Fonda, you have to unmute yourself first.
Okay. I found Israel a land of incredible opportunities. I arrived here as a ballet teacher. Couldn't learn the language. I went to the Ulpan for 1 month, was off the job. It was absolutely, I was full of desperation because I was quite a good dancer, ballet teacher in Port Elizabeth, mainly also volunteering for Coloreds. I won the Woman of the Year award. But I came to Israel, and because I didn't have the language, I did not succeed. I was so unhappy that my husband said, who was an architect, go home, go back to Petersburg, my hometown in South Africa, and go and have a holiday for 2-3 weeks and see what, if you really want to go back, we'll go back. I came back after 3 weeks. It was a great holiday. I was spoiled and it was great. And I said, no, this is the place. I'll find something else. I have a problem learning language. I can read Hebrew. I can't speak it. The words don't come out like understandable at all. For instance, I went to at a buffet in a hotel in Eilat. I wanted my chicken well done. So I said to the chef, Bevakasha, ani rutza, and then I got lost. Kol hakavod. Because kol hakavod to me, well done. So that's the extent. And 29 years later, I still can't speak this language. So what happened to me was I came back and I said, no, Mark, this is the place I want to be. I love the freedom in Eilat, in Israel. We made Aliyah to Renana. And then I was offered, I'd always been interested in food and catering, but had done it within the community of the Polokwane, it's called now, my hometown. And I suddenly got a phone call from a very well-known South African caterer. She was Dulcie Joffe in Kwasaba. And she offered me, she was very busy, and she said, wouldn't I like to do a little function? I never slept 6 months. I was absolutely terrified, didn't know the food, didn't know the language, didn't know anything. And I became a caterer for 15 years. I was catering in Renana. I never thought I'd end up in the South African embassy doing all their catering events, doing Independence Day events, welcoming new ambassadors. So I just think it's a very challenging place. And sometimes lucky things happen along the way. And it's a place of opportunity. I became very involved in volunteering, which I love. I didn't do so much volunteering in South Africa. I stuck to my dancing years. So I feel it's challenging, yes, but it gives one a tremendous feeling of empowerment. And I could go on and on, but
Thank you, Fonda. Thank you for sharing that experience. And in my opinion, you've been extremely successful and part of a wonderful community. So well done to you. Would anybody else like to share a moment or two of their own experience?
Mine is not so much an experience as it is a
question.
I'm looking to make
I see your name's Annie.
It's Annie, yes.
Annie, okay, Annie. Welcome.
British born, South African raised, currently back in the UK. I'm looking to make Aliyah, please God, within the next year. And my question is, how hard is it as a single woman to integrate into Israeli society? I don't have a husband, my children are grown up, I would be coming on my own. How hard is that experience?
Well, I think that there are lots of women groups in Israel, and they're, especially in the Renana area, I know personally of maybe 6 or 7 single British women who came without their husbands and brought their children because the husbands either didn't want to come to Israel, and there are opportunities. It depends on your own personality, I guess, and how much you really want to integrate into society. But Israel is the land of opportunity, and I believe that if you want to be here, there's no way that it won't work. What profession are you in?
My profession is varied. The last 20 years I have spent in media and specifically in radio.
Well, there's lots of radio opportunities. There are some English news channels and television channels. The opportunities are endless, but you would have to research it before you came. And I would recommend you already start going to Upan.
I'm currently on Upan Bet and doing 3 other Hebrew classes.
Well, it's a definite challenge, and we wish you all the luck. And when you do come, we are here.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Can I just add to that? I think it's just important to do a lot of homework, to be in touch with Telfed. We've got an employment counselor. Just be in touch with as many people as you can to do the research before you arrive. Otherwise, it's really difficult to actually do the footwork when you're already here. That would be my advice. Is try and connect with as many people before so you come educated.
That's what I'm trying to do. That's why.
It's not an easy place to live, but it is definitely, if you can make it here, it's the best place to live.
Well, that's why I'm coming to tonight, and I'm doing my Hebrew studies, and
Brilliant.
I'm doing everything that I can do.
So be in touch with us. Really, I really will reach out to Telfed, and we have a lot of resources you can tap into. It really is worth your while.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
And
Thank
if
you.
I may add as well, reach out to the WWCA Israel chapter. We're a wonderful group of sisterhood here to support and to help each other. So do reach out to us as well, and we're happy to support you in any way that we can.
And if anybody wants, by the way, to attend English language theatre within Israel, there is a wonderful English language theatre that's been started that is called Center Stage. It's based near Ramat Gan, and it's run by a friend of mine. English language theatre, not just for English speakers, they do run Hebrew programs as well, but it's a great place just to be in touch with people who are Anglo.
Amy, if you could send me the email contact, I'd like to be in touch with them. Maybe they'll be interested in doing an event for the Telfed, some kind of thing.
Absolute pleasure.
Either send it to Aviva, or she's also online, or to me, and we can investigate it.
I will do that with pleasure.
Thank you so much. Good luck, Amy.
South African Olim.
Wonderful. Would anybody else like to make some comments or share their experiences or say something for the evening? Lilach, I can see you bouncing. Anyway, so thank you everybody so much. Thank you all to all the ladies. I want to know who's going to support the men if we can have a boys club. What do you think about that, ladies?
You can speak to my husband, he's keen.
Go for it.
Doesn't like feeling left out.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, a warm thank you to everybody for joining us this evening. It's been a wonderful evening, very inspirational, and thank you so much to the ladies.
Thank you, everyone. It was amazing, and all your wisdom. I know I personally got a lot out of it. So thank you so much for giving of your time, and thank you everyone for joining. And please visit our website. I posted it in the chat, telfed.org.il. We have lots to offer, as Bat-Chen mentioned, and lots of other events as well. So thank you, WWCA. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Before you go, I do want to share with you an upcoming event. We will be having a virtual tour of the UAE on the 29th of April with Cindy Klein at 8 p.m. Please join us to our adventure in the UAE. We look forward to that adventure. Good night to everybody, and thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you to all the amazing women. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Eddie.